Welcome to the Neutral Zone. Today we're going to be talking about Oregon State during our recap series. As always, if you're new to the channel, please do us a favor, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single upload. Our next live show is Sunday, 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be talking about the transfer portal, news in college football, the coaching carousel, things of that nature. But Dad, let's get right into it. Oregon State, obviously, I was a little high on them this year with DJU. They lose DJU now, but what is your takeaway from this season and kind of how things unfolded for them?
Yeah, I would say an 8-5 season is probably a little disappointing. I know they had high expectations coming off of a 10-win season the year before, and getting DJU with a lot of the weapons that they brought back. I know they expected better than this. I think for Oregon State, though, 8-5 is not a bad year when you put it in the scope of this program as a whole. Again, probably did not meet their expectations, but I don't think this is something to be mad about. I do have some concerns for next year, but I think right now they're probably the 8-5 season is probably a halfway decent season, especially in what we talked about all year was a loaded Pac-12. So I think truly, and I don't know, I can't remember in the preview video where we had them, but this is about right.
Yeah, that's got to be
This
right.
is one of those. This is one of those, and again, I can't remember the exact number, but this isn't when I look at their schedule and I look at the games they lost and games they won, and again, you could probably go both ways in either one of those directions, but I would say the 8-5 is probably in lines with where their talent was. They didn't lose a game that I'm really like, and especially when you look at it in the scope of things. They lost to Washington State, who was a pretty good team. Again, I think you can say, hey, maybe they should have won that game, but they lost by 3, like you mentioned. They lost to Arizona, who really came on late in the season, looked really good.
That was a very small margin of victory as well.
That was a 3-point game. So the Washington State game was a 3-point game. The Arizona game was a 3-point game. They lost to Washington by 2 points. And then, Oregon got them. Oregon beat them pretty bad. And then, like I said, I don't really count the bowl game. They got smacked around by Notre Dame pretty good. But again, by that point in time, a bunch of players weren't playing. So 4 losses. One of them you call bad, the Oregon loss. The other ones, they lost by, I'd say, less than a possession. You're talking about 3-3-2. So a total of 8 points? A total of 1 possession in 3 games. So this is why I say you can't be mad at where they are. All of those games could have went either way. And I think I had them losing the Utah game, the UCLA game that they did pull off. So they had a bunch of 50-50 games, and they probably went 500 in those 50-50 games. What's your thoughts?
So before I kind of dive too deep into what I think, I'm going to actually really quick, briefly pull up our video and just see where we had them. So bear with me for 1 second. Because I kind of want to just see where we had this team. Ruby's behind me. So I had them going 8-4, and you had them going 9-3. So
okay, so
I had them 8-4 in the regular season, obviously, and then they lose the bowl game. We both had them losing to Utah. You had them beating UCLA. I had them losing to UCLA, and then we both had them losing to Washington and Oregon. So
the games in there different, the Washington State and the Arizona. And again, I think at the beginning of the year, we didn't know that this Arizona team was going to take off like they did.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a really good year for Oregon State. You can't knock it. We, like you said, we talked about how good the Pac-12 was this year. And I mean, yes, they lost by 32 or 31 to Notre Dame in the bowl game, but a lot of players didn't play in that game. So I don't even look at that game, in all honesty. You lose big to Oregon. Oregon ended up being a really good team, so I think Oregon just had their number. But I think this was a really good team this year. Obviously, you lose a lot of players to the draft. You lose your coach to Michigan State. You lose the backup Aiden Childs. Yeah, Aiden Childs goes to Michigan State, and then DJU goes to Florida State. So I definitely think that there's area of concern for this team heading into next year. But if I'm not mistaken, they do have a loaded Mountain West schedule. I favor them over a lot of teams in the Mountain West. So I think they're going to be at minimum like 8-4 again next year. I don't think they're going to fall off a cliff just because I think the team is going to be better than a lot of their opposition that they're going to be playing. But I also don't think that we came into this year thinking Oregon State was a national championship contender. So I don't think 8-4 in the regular season is a letdown. I think that's right on, like you said, right on par with what I said. It was a little bit under what you said at 9-3. But with how good the Pac-12 ended up being, I mean, we saw a team like USC who I had them going 11-1 or 12-0, and they completely fell off a cliff and went 7-5 because of how good the Pac-12 was. Yes, USC played a little bit bad, in spurts. Obviously, their defense was terrible, but I don't think USC is a terrible team. I think the Pac-12 is just really good. Obviously, Washington runner-up in the national championship game, and then you have a team like Oregon who very well had an argument to get in the Pac or in the national or the college football playoff as well.
Absolutely.
So I just think there's a lot of good teams. A lot of parity in the Pac-12 this year. Kind of ironic that it was the last year that it was like the best year we've had in a long time in the Pac-12. So I'm going to miss it, obviously. Oregon State doesn't really have a home right now. They're with the Mountain West, but not really with the Mountain West. So I'm not sure how it's going to pan out.
Technically, they're still in the Pac-12.
Yeah. But I definitely think as an Oregon State fan, there should be no kind of hung heads or anything like that. This is a really good year. You declined from the 10-win season, but nobody saw a 10-win season coming in 2022. So that kind of came out of nowhere. Obviously, you bring over DJU, who was a former number 2 overall quarterback or number 1 quarterback coming out of high school. So you wanted a little bit more out of him. But I think he showed kind of spurts and flashes of being a serviceable quarterback in the pro style offense. Obviously, he came over from Clemson. I'm a big Clemson fan, so I'm a big fan of DJ, and it just didn't pan out there. But he looked good under center. He had a lot of really good games. Albeit I think one of them was against like San Jose State. It might have been UC Davis or something, but he had some really big games against lower teams. But he also had big time moments against the Oregons, against the Washingtons, and things like that. So I'm excited to see where Oregon State goes post DJU era, and now that Aiden Childs is gone, and obviously the coach has moved on. I just don't know where they go from here. But like I said, I still think they're going to have a really good season next year based on the schedule they have. Yeah. So I'm very excited to see how that pans out for them.
Yeah, you bring Pac-12 talent to the Mountain West. They should do very well. And if they do have a spike in their record next year, I think that will be really kind of the reason behind it. We'll see a bunch of guys that we don't know. Galbert Brinson, I think, is going to be the starting quarterback. I think he played in a bowl game. A bunch of guys that we haven't really heard of are really going to take the field. But again, this is a team that was able to recruit at a Pac-12 level, obviously played well in the Pac-12 the last 2 seasons. So I think, not to call Mountain West down, but I think we got to be honest and say it's probably a step down from the Pac-12. What's your question? I mean, what's your thoughts on DJU, his college football career? He came in with so much prestige, so much hype, and again, if you remember, obviously you remember, but for everybody else out there, when he kind of took over for Trevor, when Trevor got hurt, had a good game against Notre Dame where they won. I think we
lost that game.
Oh, lost, but he played very good.
But it was a decent game, yeah.
He played very well. Goes into the next season where he's going to start his sophomore season. And I think there was all the hype in the world. There was pre-Heisman hype for him. Obviously, as you mentioned, didn't live up to it over the course of the next couple of years. Really hasn't had a decent year at Oregon State. I think we thought that maybe a more wide open, different system would do better for him. But you're still talking about only 2,600 yards, only 57% completion percentage. So what's your thoughts? And what's your thoughts as he moves to Florida State? Do you think that this is a legit big-time quarterback?
Well, I mean, no, I don't think he's a big-time quarterback, but I think he is good enough to take a team to the playoffs. And I think the reason being, I think he has a big arm. He reminds me a little bit of like a Joe Milton, where he has all the upside in the world, but it just doesn't seem to pan out. Obviously, Florida State has history now of bringing transfer portal guys in and that being successful. We don't know if that's going to be able to replicate, but we saw it happen once, so I think it could happen again. Obviously, I think he's a downgrade to Jordan Travis slightly, so I don't think Florida State fans are going to be able to get that same kind of explosiveness out of DJ that they got from Jordan Travis. But I think he's a great quarterback. We saw him at Oregon State on QB design runs. He's literally like a tight end at the quarterback position on the tush push kind of plays or the design QB sneaks. It's very hard to bring him down, and we saw him do it at Clemson as well. He hasn't had terrible numbers. Obviously, his sophomore year, I think he had like 10 touchdowns and 7 picks, which is not ideal. But his junior year at Clemson, he had 22 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, over 2,000 yards. This year, he had the exact same thing, 2,000 yards, passing, 22 touchdowns, 7 picks. So that's not amazing, but it's not, it's not terrible. I think that's good enough to get you obviously a winning season at being 8-5, and 3 of those losses came by a field goal or less, which could have very well swung the other way. And you're looking at an 11-1 season rather than an 8-4 season. So I do think that he has a bright future. I don't know kind of Florida State ceiling. I need to see that on paper. But I like the move by him to go there because he plays at a big time school. It's going to give him a little bit more exposure for the next level. I think he is a more NFL style quarterback, pro style quarterback. We saw him play at Oregon State and play a lot better than he did at Clemson. Just, check downs, reads, and kind of winning football. I think at Clemson, there was a lot more hype regarding national championships, following in the footsteps of a Trevor, who followed in the footsteps of a Deshaun Watson. So the shoes were so big to fill that, he kind of just folded a little bit, and that's okay. Like, it happens. So I think going to Oregon State, there was no shoes to fill. Obviously, they were a 10-win team, but there wasn't any championship expectation. So I think now going to Florida State, you're back at a school that has championship expectations. So kind of see how he fights adversity there. But I do think he's going to have a good year. But before we head out, I kind of want to bring something up.
Okay.
Because obviously we talked, last 2 or 3 minutes about DJU, but I want to get back on Oregon State. Oregon State is in the Pac-2, if you will, right now.
Right.
How is it going to work? I just thought about this. Listen, their only tough game, in my opinion, is Oregon. That's a rivalry game. It's a civil war.
Right.
If they somehow, some way beat Oregon, they go undefeated. How is that going to work? Because let me wait before you answer. Let me name you their schedule: Idaho State, San Diego State, Oregon, Purdue, Cal, Washington State, Boise State, Air Force, Nevada, Colorado State, San Jose State, and UNLV. Like 8 or 9 of those games, like I don't even want to watch. So it's like, even if they go 11-1 hypothetically, I think they have a case to get in the playoff, even though they're not in a Power 5 conference.
Yeah, I think at 12 teams, that probably helps them because I think you give a little bit more leeway when we're talking about 12. You say, okay, well, they've earned enough to at least get a shot at the playoffs. But that is a very weak schedule. And like you mentioned, one game that's really, to me,
and it's a rivalry.
Washington State, but again, without Cam Ward, who knows? I don't know. I think how to handle Oregon State and Washington State is going to be something that probably needs to be talked about by the committee now, or by NCAA football now, right? What do you do with a conference of 2? Is there a conference champion? Do they play in the Mountain West's conference championship? I don't know all the logistics of those 2 teams this year.
I'm going to be honest. I think Washington State is even in a better situation because their toughest game is
Washington, right?
But Washington, we don't even know what that team's going to be.
Yeah.
So they play Texas Tech, Washington, and Oregon State. I think we could be, and this could be a hot take to end this video on, but we could be talking about the winner of Washington State and Oregon State potentially being in the playoffs. And I don't think any other kind of college football podcast has brought that up, because that's something that I just thought about on the top of my head. Like, what happens if one of these teams go 11-1, which I would say when the time comes and we do the preview, we're going to have them favored in 11 of their games. I don't favor anybody else over Oregon State on that schedule. The only other game that I would say could be a trap game is Purdue. And I would favor Washington
Purdue's
State over Purdue. You have Washington State, obviously, who we just talked about, but that's even tit for tat. They just lost Cam Ward, and we saw them fall off the cliff with him. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how we preview them. But just early looking at it, I would say they're going to win 10 games next year. I would be very surprised if they lost more than 2 games, because their schedule is so pitiful.
So weak.
But as always, if you guys are new to the channel, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. We post college football. We try to post college football daily.
Yeah.
Caveat that it's not daily. We try to do daily. We do go live every Sunday. So please come around for that. 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to talk football with you guys. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.
Peace.